Welcome to episode 1 of The Tea with Mikey. I've got here with me Autumn McClintock, otherwise known as Huemongrel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hi, it's me.
We're sipping on some tea, of course. What do you got over there?
So I chose a lemongrass and ginger. I thought the ginger would be really helpful for my stomach. Been a little anxious lately, and just a little bundle of energy. So I thought it sounded really relaxing.
I feel that. Yeah, I got some Vanilla Spice Perfect Energy. I think it's by Yogi or something like that. But yeah, decided to have something a little nice. I've actually been doing those meditations you recommended to me, the Deepak Chopra abundance meditations. Yeah, I'm on day 20. So yeah, I've been basically the day after I was like, okay, I think someone else also recommended it to me, so I'm like, okay, that really means I need to do it.
Yes.
So, yeah. Today's lesson was have little bits of luxury. Yeah. So I'll take this tea as a little bit of luxury.
Yes. Out of your mug that reads Supermom.
That's right.
In comic book font.
That's right. For those who are not well, this will be in video format eventually. But yeah, as of now, my mug says Supermom. Maybe it'll be the the picture of the podcast upload or something like that. It'd be that and then the guest. But yeah, cool. So what do you do? What kind of...
What's my life?
Yeah.
Yes. So I am a board-certified music therapist. I've been doing that since, I started to go to school for it in 2014. So I've been working a minute to make it my career. And what that looks like for my day-to-day is that I go into spaces of usually caregiving, like homes or day facilities for adults with special needs, or clinics that care for traumatic brain injuries. And we use music as the tool to meet their therapeutic and non-therapeutic goals. For example, in traumatic brain injury, that looks like speech. And to get that speech to come out, we use music as the tool, but it might look like karaoke, or it might look like talking about song lyrics. So I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a very beautiful job. I have so much respect for that. And it's I always hear, every time I've come back here and you have a new story about how, specific you give your, what is it, patients? It's not necessarily patients, right?
I like to say clients.
Clients is the better word. That's
usually
what I was
just looks like buddies.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But, the people you work with in all these, little exercises, I remember you telling me about one that you had a little drum and then had to hit the drum. That was for motor control, right?
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's usually for gross motor and tracking and midline crossing, which are all really important skills to foster brain development.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Music therapy. It's just, the capacity to heal, because I feel like music is built in. It's a built-in feature of humanity.
Absolutely.
Even animals,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I frequent drum circles quite a bit. It isn't quite music therapy in the sense that it can be. You can use it for music therapy, but those who usually facilitate are doing it kind of more as a community building rather than specifically meeting goals of eye contact or taking data on how many times did you hit the drum over a duration. In those drum circles, I'm often reminded that you have that rhythm of your heart, and it's your heartbeat, and it's your mother's heartbeat, and it's your grandmother's heartbeat, because it was all carried at the same time. There was bits of you in your grandmother when she was birthing your mother. And I love that idea, too, because, to tie that back in with music therapy, we like to talk about our own internal rhythms. And if you think about it even as you're walking down the street, I'm a slow walker, and my husband is a very fast walker. He's got that marching band kind of stride.
He's going somewhere.
Yeah. He moves with purpose. And I'm just kind of like, my purpose is to stare at this leaf and to listen to this bird and try to whistle back at it and see if it's going to call and respond with me.
That's funny. I love whistling to birds and making noises.
Yes.
Just like, yeah.
Birds are so smart.
They are very smart. Yeah.
In college, I graduated in 2017, 2018. It depends how you count that obligatory music therapy internship. It was like an entire year, but it only counted for 1 credit. So
that's insane.
I know. 1,000 hours.
The credits with music for music schools is crazy. Like
It's
the music theory
wild.
class, you meet 5 days a week, but you only get 3 credits. Mm-hmm. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. That's another podcast right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But while I was going to campus, I would take my leftover granola bar and just sprinkle it on top of my car.
I love that.
And I think they were grackles. Tempe has a lot of grackles.
Yeah,
They're not all quite crows because they're
Yeah, they're like smaller.
yeah, they're a little smaller.
Like mini crows.
And they would leave me olives. And I don't know if
Interesting.
they thought that was like a good exchange. Like, I've heard that the more they like whatever you leave them, the better the treats will be for you. Or like you can reinforce that behavior with like, oh, you left me $1? Like, here's an entire, I don't know, bird cake.
Interesting.
But yeah, birds are really, really intuitive.
Yeah, that makes
cool.
sense. I could see them having left the olive because, like, the bird's like, olives are super cool. I love olives. And it's like, okay, here's an equivalent exchange, you know?
Yes.
Because, again, they're, like, really smart. Like,
So smart.
I feel like animal intelligence is just so... a lot of people like to separate the animal intelligence and human intelligence, and it's like... And we're animals too. Like humans are animals too. I was talking to my partner because she's in a psychology degree right now.
Okay.
And like I forget exactly like the phrasing, but it kind of just came up. It was the idea of the separation between humans and animals, and it's like, no, like humans are animals. I feel like academia likes to have that like holier than thou attitude where it's
Right.
like I'm above you, and there's like a humble that I just love a lot of indigenous ideologies because of that, where this idea of channeling animals kind of comes through, and like it's like channeling an animal spirit. And it also doubles because I forget exactly where I saw it. It was probably like on a TikTok or something or other, but it was along the lines of that humans are the best at mimicry, where like that's where we have kind of evolved, that niche we've evolved into, and that kind of that completely checks out to me, especially considering all these like ideologies and like animal spirits and calling in that kind of thing. It just works together, you know.
Yeah. And like even obviously we have big brains or whatever. But those brains are pretty self-destructive.
That is true. That is really true.
So truly like what sets us apart are opposable thumbs and I guess, I don't know, having jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Animals still use tools. They still, have recreation. They still have,
That's true.
I watched this video of an eagle who lost its baby.
Hold on.
And it was recorded, just eagle cam, that the eagle would sit on this branch and just kind of like squawk. And then another eagle would come and like console it.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like heartbroken
Yeah.
because animals do be grieving. They do
Yeah.
be sad.
That's true. And yeah, like, yeah, animals just, you can look into the eye of any creature and be like, there's a soul in there, you know. I've seen animals with more soul than people, you know. Like, it's kind of funny that something you were saying earlier, like people just have jobs. Like if an animal could speak English, they'd laugh at people and make fun of people for working jobs. It's like, idiot. You could just go out and like forage and eat food.
Oh yes. That is actually one of my hobbies, is foraging.
That's right. I kind of just recalled that like right at the moment.
Yeah.
Too. I've been meaning to get into that, and I feel like there's a lot of wild food in Arizona.
Yes. Yes. There's actually a book that I have at home. Its exact title might not be how I say it, but I'm thinking of the picture, and it's like a cactus, and it's got prickly pears on it, and it's like Southwest Foraging.
I could probably look it up right now.
I believe it's by John Slattery. And there's so much abundance in the desert. So I moved here to Phoenix from Illinois, Rockford, Illinois, if anyone wants to call me out later. I escaped. And when you grow up in Illinois, everything is so vibrant in the Midwest. Like, you have cornfields surrounding your city.
Lots of green.
Lots of green, lots of rain. You have like 6 months of wet.
Imagine that.
But because of that, like if you go out for a walk, you're listening to, if it's in the morning, you're listening to the birds and the dogs and the crickets, and there's so much chattering. And in the evenings, it turns into like raccoons and bats, and there's just always noise and movement. So when I moved to Phoenix for college, I was really depressed because everything comparatively, because I wasn't going as still to see it, was just, it looked dead. It looked like in reserve.
Yeah.
And nothing was like in your face. There were no chipmunks running up at you like, what are you eating? You know? So it took me a really long time and a lot of practicing of just being still to notice how stinking abundant the desert is. There's so much life. It just has adapted and doesn't come out maybe during the times that you're looking for it because it's hot.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, but mesquite trees specifically have pods, and it's pretty common that people, at least around here, know that you can mill the pods into flour and use the mesquite in your baking. But the way they grow is also like a pea pod, so you can just eat it off the tree.
I think you can do that with, Palo Verde as well. Like, it's insane how much like food just kind of spawns.
Absolutely.
It is a matter of perspective a lot of the time, because the Sonoran Desert is one of the wettest deserts. I feel like the whole feeling of Arizona being like dead is just the fact that most of it has been paved over with concrete.
Yes.
And it's like,
truly,
you go out into the actual wilderness and it's beautiful. It is lush. Yeah. You know, like you would look at it and be like, that's a desert, and then it's 100 degrees outside and you're like, okay, it's a desert.
Like, I feel it. I like to call that temperature ovenly. Like instead
it is
of
very
heavenly,
ovenly,
or like it just feels like you're taking out
so great.
cookies.
I'm going to steal that. Yeah, because it's like you open up the oven, but it doesn't go away.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, for those listening, the book is Southwest Foraging by John Slattery. I think you got it right. Yeah. 117 wild and flavorful edibles from barrel cactus to wild oregano.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And I think that's one of the things we bonded over as well, as just like...
Probably cactuses.
Cactuses, yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, I'm growing prickly pear. I'm growing... Let's see. I have a wide variety of cactus. This will not be the first time I talk about them. Or the last time. Because, let me think. So I have a Peruvian apple cactus. I have a regular prickly pear. I scavenged. His name is Charlie. I scavenged Charlie from a frond that was on the ground on Grand Avenue, I think,
Nice.
actually. So,
City cactus.
yeah, exactly. City cactus. He was just on the ground, and I'm like, you're going to die. So I took him, and now he's big. He looks like a little dude. He's got, like, arms. And then I'm growing a variety of, like, San Pedro cactuses, which are psychoactive.
Wow.
And all within the realm of legality too. Like they are first and foremost like ornamental plants that I'm growing them because I could eat them, but it's like they're also like kind of like my friends.
Yeah.
You know.
You don't want to eat your friends.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that though, and it's for me. I love it. I grew up in a family of gardeners. So my mom is from the Philippines. She's actually 100% indigenous Filipino.
Nice.
But unfortunately, we don't talk too much about that. Just because she had a really hard time being here and trying to express any of that. But my dad is a farm boy from Missouri. And between those two, like, meetings of worlds, like, one of the things they had in common was plants. So I was, without knowing, I was composting when I was a kid, like really young. And I would just get really confused when people would throw away eggshells or banana peels. And I'm like, oh, why
It's like,
would
that's
you do
valuable.
that?
That's a resource.
Yeah.
You know, I get that, yeah.
And my dad would grow he would like create his own planter boxes and grow anything he could get his hands on, like kale and corn and okra. And it took me a little bit into my adulthood to realize that some of the things that we were growing were immediate connections that my family had to their families. For example, elephant ear is a variant of taro, which is a Filipino staple.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's like a root, right? I'm not super
Elephant
familiar.
ear,
Like a big ol'...
It
or like
looks
taro.
ornamental. Yeah, you can look it up. It's a lot of people in the Midwest use it just as a decorative plant, but like there's so much you can do with it. And okra, and for my dad, he grew rhubarb, and that was like he remembered his mom making rhubarb pie, and it was just like just really cool to like be in your own backyard and just be able to look at a plant and be like, yoink, I know you're a mint. Ow, ow, ow. Yum. Chocolate mint, spearmint, peppermint, so many good mints.
Yeah. Yeah, I have some mint growing in the back in my backyard right now. And it's crazy. I honestly, there's like some bugs like munching on it. And I'm like, mint of all things. You'd think that'd be bug repellent. But yeah.
With its oils on the leaf.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, well, there was something else I was going to say. But yeah, that kind of reminds me of like what you were saying with the going out and just kind of like foraging in the garden. There was a saying, I think I saw it on a shirt actually. It was just like, plants have so much to give. All you got to do is ask. And it's like, because I don't know, I'm I'm hippy dippy on that end, but I talk to my plants, and every once in a while they talk to me too.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's really hard to kind of. I think it's like a muscle that you can strengthen, and it's just kind of having that open, where it's like you're hanging out next to another living thing, and suddenly a thought pops into your brain, and you're like, "Huh, okay, maybe." You know, it's like, how does that work? You know, it's like,
right.
Because I think there have been I feel like there are a few theories on that, but my favorite one is that the brain is like an antenna.
Okay.
So that totally checks out because the brain receives your consciousness, but if you're talking to animals will do it too. I don't get a ton of like animal telepathy all the time. My partner does because she loves dogs and all those kind of things. I I love animals, but I'm not like an animal person. If that makes sense. But yeah, I'm more into plants. Like my cactuses talk to me every once in a while, and it's always really cool. I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome.
So I was moving because I was like asking them if it was like all right if I ate them, and they were fine, like that kind of thing. Because it's like I'm also propagating them and I'm growing. It's a give and take.
Absolutely.
But it is one of those weird things to think about. It's like, wow, because plants are so generous,
And you can tell too. I guess it's just the quality of life. But if you eat something foraged, which I highly recommend you do, it tastes entirely different from what you could get at the store.
Yeah.
For example, like blackberries.
Foraged or homegrown, either way.
So foraged ones have kind of a more resilient flavor. Like the flavor itself tends to be pretty punchy, pretty strong. And you don't need a lot of it, but so much of it is produced. Like hawthorn berries, blackberries. I went to California recently, and my buddy told me that there are lemonade berries that just taste like lemonade when you eat them.
That's insane.
And I was like, I need to find them. But yeah, when you forage them, they have very stronger, pungent flavors because their roots are able to go so deep. The plant is built to be resilient to where it is. If you eat one that you've grown from your house, you can tell if it hasn't gotten as much water as maybe something from the grocery store that's on an automatic dripper. Or I don't know, the soil that you put into it matters too, because it depends how big the plant gets.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's interesting. I grew up in Northern California, or like the cutoff of Northern California. It's basically the California Bay Area.
Okay.
So, but like an hour and a half away from the ocean. And every once in a while we drive down to LA. And we drive down like through all these like farm areas, More recently they became like the Dust Bowl. But it is interesting to see it as well, and the whole, because I can't speak on like the whole Dust Bowl thing because I don't really know a ton about the whole like politics of that, but I know for sure that the way that a lot of commercial agriculture is run is not sustainable.
That's right. It's not. And there's kind of a demand issue, like supply and demand. And around Phoenix, I've been really lucky to discover that there are places you can go to buy ugly produce.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of about quantity over quality. I feel like even sometimes when you're buying organic, like they have to cater to the grocery store. Yeah. And then they have to like...
So it's like organic asterisk.
Yeah. And they have to change the plant's environments to get it to grow. Like plants have different seasons of growth. People have different seasons of growth. But at the grocery store, you can get a carrot whenever. You can get broccoli whenever. Like you're not building in that mindfulness practice of knowing what's in season and what's got all of those nutrients because it had the light cycle just right, or it had the water it needed. Or it's really interesting. But you can taste it, so I do highly recommend foraging. Yeah. It puts you into a good perspective of what's local, what's in your demographic, and then just the variety of tastes that are associated with your region. It's super cool.
I feel like that's what, to me, you go foraging and the way you repay the plants whose berries you ate is go like poop it out in a hole or something.
Yeah.
that's what they're built. That's what those berries are evolutionarily designed for. You know, either that or just like, you know, if you don't feel like just pooping, you could just like leave some seeds out, right? Because that's a similar thing.
Which might save you a ticket or something.
Yeah, I know, right? That's funny. That'd be funny. Like, I think about like sketches or something, or like funny scenes. I do a little bit of writing here and there, and that would be like a funny scene too. It's like a character's like, you know, foraging. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What's wrong with that? It's like, I'm repaying the plants, bro.
Yes.
But yeah, that's how you remember to repay your plants. Give them fertilizer. I've been I've been making like organic fertilizer and stuff at home, and like I have like a compost bin, all that kind of stuff. I've been getting back into growing mushrooms. I want to grow pink oyster, and like, because I'm not fully vegan, but I'm trying to now take less pressure off like the meat industry, because I'm fine with eating meat. Ideally, I would be the one who acquires the meat, you know, like I would, you know, hunt the creature, etc. And again, I think it's a similar case with plants. It's like it's best to know where it came from and be grateful for it, and like thank it for what it gives you, you know, and then use it to its best. You know, I don't have a walk-in freezer, you know, that I can store an entire carcass or something, you know. But yeah.
And I was a vegetarian for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up needing the extra protein and needing the mindfulness of what I was eating.
Yeah,
I started really young. So it was helpful for me to make decisions about my own consumption. My family at the time was very carnivorous. Like, just all of our leftovers would be meat on meat on meat, which is also kind of like a Midwestern, more accepted thing. Yeah, at the time I tried to be a vegan in Wisconsin, which didn't exist. It was like
sounds hard.
2010 or something.
That's when veganism was like kind of new, and everyone was like making fun of it. It
was.
It's like the Scott Pilgrim scene. Like, that's peak.
Eggs aren't vegan. Yeah. It was like that, where I went to, gosh, if you're from the Midwest, you'll get this. I went to Wisconsin Dells. I was so excited, because that's like the most connection you can have to water outside of just jumping in a lake or a creek. It feels kind of like going to the ocean, in the sense that you're like, there's going to be so much water and so many things to do.
Beautiful.
And I tried to eat anything there, and it was like the French fries were cooked in lard, and I was like,
Yeah, wow.
And like everything just like was covered in nacho cheese or regular cheese, because it's Wisconsin and they're known for that cheese curd. They are proud of that cheese curd. Yeah. And yeah, I'm really thankful for that time in my life, because it also kind of woke me up to food availability. And just like, in the Midwest, I feel like, at least when I was growing up, there was a practice of gardening and sharing with your neighbors that just existed in the realm that I was in, at least. But as for like what you could get at the store, or like having just a butcher or something, like, we were a little too much of a city to have that integrated into our lives. So now I'm just so conscious of like, me and my husband love food. We're foodies, if you want to coin that term, but because we're experience based and we like to experience different cultural cuisines and different comfort foods that are not our own, which is one of the great things about the city, but like, it didn't exist in the Midwest. So it's like a give and take. Like in the Midwest, you get more produce freely given. You get more connection to like there being abundance outside your door, because everything's green and lush. But here in Phoenix, it still exists. You just have to look for it a lot more carefully.
Yeah, because it kind of comes back around to what kind of food grows here. Because, like, traditional, like, European cropping kind of, like, doesn't really work here.
It doesn't.
You can brute force it, but, again, like we were just talking about earlier, there's so much food that will just grow.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can literally not water it, you know? Like, like prickly pears grow out in the desert, you know, and that's fruit, you know, and instead of, you know, trying to grow apples, you know. I think pomegranates will grow here. Like, every once in a while, there are certain trees and shrubs and stuff that will grow here. My backyard actually has, I mean, they're hooked up to a drip. You know, the place I'm renting right now has a lemon tree, an orange tree, and some kind of berry bush. I didn't even realize that berry bushes will grow in Arizona.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So to kind of catch you back up on what I do, obviously I'm a music therapist. I've said that before. But for the past 6 months, I've been cultivating this studio space that we're recording from right now.
That's right.
And it's called Made Space.
Probably should have mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And we named it with the intention that we made space for all of these creative endeavors, for all of these different learning experiences. So on Saturday, which is 2 days ago, I hosted a clothing swap. So in a practice of sustainability, you bring the clothes you don't wear that you would normally just make Goodwill's problem. But instead of having a company profit off of that, you bring it to a space with other humans and they're like, I love this. I'm out of tennis shoes. Like, this is my size. Like, wow. So we were practicing that and just exchanging clothes on Saturday. And it was so cool.
That's really awesome. I like that. Yeah, Goodwill. Because I donate stuff to Goodwill, but I think I was talking to my roommate about it, and we think what happened is that, like, the pandemic hit, and then people started really wanting to, like, clear out their space, and since they were basically locked in their house a lot of the time, they tidied it up and, you know, got rid of a bunch of stuff, a lot of stuff that was still good. But lately, it feels like people basically put one step away from trash at Goodwill, you know?
It's hard. And on the idea of sustainability and just, like, being aware of your surroundings and the resources available to you, I came across this idea, and I'm sure it was on social media or something, but just the reminder that, like, there's no clothes making robots. Like, sure, there are robots that make, or machines that make textiles, but, like, how those textiles become clothes is hand done. Like, it might be a sewing machine, but it's a person feeding it through a sewing machine. So, like, as you're, you know, practicing sustainability, it's very easy to just go on Amazon and just click, click, click. Cool, I've got some pants. And if they don't fit, I'll just, I don't know, send them back maybe, or, like, send them to Goodwill maybe. But there's a lot of steps in between that click to get it to you. Like, the creation of the fabric or the textile, the sewing of it, the transportation to get it to be sewn, and then to get it to be sold is, like, what, 2-3 car trips? And then, like, all of the cyber energy it takes to run, I'm not great at computers, but, like, to run the towers that allow you to use Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah.
To find those things, that's still energy. It's still a resource you're expelling. And then to get that thing that is now purchased that you know exists to fly to you, or to fly to a warehouse, to drive to you, and then for you to send it back out somewhere else. Like, that's so many steps.
Yeah.
So many steps. So I'm really excited to have more opportunities as a human just to kind of create a smaller community and a smaller scope of this world that's so big, because it really gives you perspective on that things don't need to be just the way that they are because they've been that way, or they're easy. Like, I got an entire new wardrobe. 10 people got an entire new wardrobe. Oh, and I brought that up because one of the people who came through exchanged mulberries from their bush, which I was thinking might be the berry bush that you had.
Interesting. It might be mulberries. Let me look
They
that up. Continue.
grow really bright pinkish and then red, and then they grow dark. And that's when they're ready to eat. Yeah, you can find mulberries in a lot of more heat-dense places. I think
it looks like it's more like a tree, right?
Mulberry. I think it's a bush, but it probably could be
Or at
groomed
least
into a tree.
the image I'm seeing, it looks like it's like a branch. It's all like really close up, so I don't really have the context of, yeah. But yeah, what you said about the fact that there's no like T-shirt machine, like it's all made by people. That seriously created a internal change for me. It's like it really put it into perspective. Because I mean, to an extent, I already knew that, but I didn't really internalize and click until you said it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like wow, because then you said that, and then everything I'd ever bought that could have, you know, been made by someone's hands, like, clicked in my brain, and it's like, oh shit, like.
And you can feel it too. Kind of that idea of like connecting with the plants.
Yeah.
On a very. Oh, there's a truck outside.
Oh, yeah.
I heard scuttling noises. Anyways, connecting with the plants and connecting with animals. Clothes are that way too. I don't have many clothes, and the clothes I do have all been exchanged or swapped.
Most of my wardrobe is thrifted at this point. Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's so many clothes out there. Like, why not? Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can tell, too, if the thread quality isn't intentional or if it's a really thin, kind of disposable material. Or you can tell if it's not made with intention or if it's not made with a calm psyche.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, kind of going into, like, my spiritual beliefs, like, whatever, like, the vibes of the place are imbued to whatever is made there, for better or for worse, you know?
Yeah.
That was, I mean, this is back to an earlier topic, but when you're talking about how all these, like Amazon, for example, you know, it's not just Amazon though, because there are so many other companies that are, I guess, guilty of this, but I feel like it's just so inefficient, and there are so many. I've been doing the research into what it takes to go off grid once I can.
Yes.
So
that's my mental escapism from the city.
Yeah. So that's why I've been doing all that research into batteries and stuff and trying to see how I can portably power as much as I can and do what I can without electricity, because then electricity too is like, we use so much electricity.
Yeah.
And at least in America, you know, and it's kind of ridiculous, like how much is just wasted.
Yeah.
I think even especially in Arizona too, and I don't know if it's necessarily the same, but yeah, like growing up in California, right, we were a little more electricity conscious, but I think it's also the household I grew up in was a more lack mindset oriented, where it's like, oh no, turn those lights off, the energy bill is going to go up, like that kind of thing. But
right, so it was more attached maybe to money than it was to that sustainability.
Yeah, but I just am so into sustainability too. It's like, it's almost a crime that there's not solar panels on every house in Arizona. That would take so much pressure off the grid.
It would.
It would be expensive, of course, and the solar panels will get dusty.
Right.
But just clean the solar panels. It's part of house maintenance. Like, if you have a house, you should take care of it, you know?
Yeah. And I know that one of the popular debates of solar panels is the resources that go into making them.
That's right.
But then I just got this, like, I guess, proposition in the mail to, like, support or not support these new bills coming up to create an entire stadium, a new stadium that doesn't exist.
Arizona does not need another stadium.
And I just think about that in the sense of, like, the benefit of a stadium as advertised is more jobs or, like, you know.
More road closures.
Yeah, or, like, I don't know, trying to pump the economy around where the stadium's built. But then, like, stadiums are used for entertainment. And I think about being an artist in the city and outside of music therapy, in the evenings, I'm usually doing gigs or teaching lessons for, like, youth theater. I'm in a Spotlight Youth Theater orchestra right now playing bass for their musical Runaways. And, like, there's such underfunding there where it's like you're adding entertainment, but you're not really supporting the existing entertainment. Yeah. So really it's just kind of superficial.
Yeah, that kills me. I've never really been a fan of sports and, like, that kind of stuff that, you know, would use a stadium. I don't think I, as a kid, recognized it, but I feel like kids sometimes have this wisdom beyond their age. But sports is bread and circus, you know, to distract people from actual problems going on. Where it's like it's a distraction. Right. We already have stadiums. We have plenty of stadiums already. We have enough, you know.
Think about how much time they go unused.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And it's like, yeah, that kills me too. It's like, come on. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah. I like adding this idea of sustainability into my creative practices. As a mindfulness practice, it looks like picking up trash and making that trash into, like, little art and just leaving the art somewhere next to a trash can. So obviously they can just throw it away, but, like, just kind of creating that mindfulness around it. But also here, like, I feel a little misunderstood with how much community I want to create, and, you know, other people creating or looking to have a studio space don't really understand why it's significant if it's not bringing in money. Yeah. And I'm like, well, it's significant because, like, I got an entire wardrobe just from, like, asking people to bring their surplus and exchanging it. And now I get to, like, dish out that wardrobe at different spaces like women's shelters or gender-affirming clothing drives or exchange groups within my neighborhood, which are called Buy Nothing groups. And, like, it's how it should be. It's how it has been in ideas before of, like, just smaller communities, you know? Yeah. Like, there is a lot of resource sharing that we don't practice anymore because it's just been advertised to us that it's better to buy it, or, you know, you want the brand name, or it means something if you have something shiny versus something that's loved and learned, you know? I don't know.
No, I totally get you. It's a tragedy that the American system has come to that, right? Where it's like, it's no longer community oriented. I feel like there is, like, a turn where it's like people are like, wait, why are we doing it this way? That's stupid. You know, like, I forget exactly where I was going to go with that, but
like a mindset shift into being aware of how we're doing things.
Exactly. And I think it is because of a lot of social media too, you know, and of course stuff like TikTok can be a massive time waster. It is also a knowledge resource. You know, it is social media is a tool.
Yeah.
And it can be used for good things and it can be used for bad things, right?
Yeah.
It just is, rather than, and I think that's why the government's trying to ban it too, because it's like, oh no, people are able to share the bad things the government is doing at a more rapid pace than ever.
Yeah.
You know? And
Or
it's
even just like, I don't know, there's so much idea around cybersecurity too.
That is true.
But like, yeah, there's...
It's like, no, only American companies can steal your information.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that the shift continues.
Yeah.
Just into like being communities again.
Yeah.
The pandemic really made me super aware of all of the resources that I wasn't using at the moment. Because before then, I had just spent pretty much my whole adult life in school. So I wasn't really consuming too much that wasn't directly handed to me, like an internship, or not that was handed to me. I earned it.
Yeah.
But like just those community resources specifically. So if I wasn't seeing them on campus, I wasn't really seeing them. So I worked a couple years as a professional in my career, and then the pandemic hit, so I had to do it all online, which was weird.
Yeah.
And I was still an essential worker too, so I was still like giving care to kiddos with autism in their homes and giving and working and living. But it really made me aware of like how many exchange things were happening, specifically because of social media. Like, you know, oh, I've got eggs. Like, who needs eggs? Or like, I've got toilet paper. Who needs toilet paper? Like, and you can just feel the, like, the intention and the reciprocity. I think one person on Facebook was selling toilet paper at the time, and I was like, that's so bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah, just what a beautiful practice in creative practice and mindfulness practice and sustainability practice to just kind of bring it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of, I wrote it down, but it all really does boil down to community, like you're talking about. And that is what has made humans strong over the millennia, you know?
Absolutely.
Humans have existed in this like physical format for like 200,000 years, like something like that. That's why we're still here, is community.
Yeah.
There is that it's very beautiful. There was that discovery of someone with a broken femur, but also there was evidence that other people would take care of that person.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right? Yeah. And it's because it wasn't the evidence of a broken femur, it was a healed femur.
Femur.
Yeah, exactly. Because like if you break your femur in the wild, you're done. But if you have people that like you enough that want to take care of you, it's an amazing thing, you know? And that's I feel like a lot of the time, and it's not easy, and just like the way things have gone in this country, I feel like some people would just leave someone there at this point, you know? And that's not to say, because I mean, I'm talking about this in a vacuum, you know, but there are just so many. It's so interesting because it does also come down to like, do the other people like you enough in order to take care of you? So that, because it's like, are you a participant of the community, you know? And that's one of the interesting things I'm looking at when it comes to building a community, is also like making sure that vibe check is on point. You know?
And that kind of honestly ties it back to spirituality too, where it's like,
do I want to share that energy? It's like, do I want to have some of your energy and am I fine with you having some of my energy?
Right. And making sure that you're attending to your own energy and well-being enough to know that you're not causing someone else strife, or to know that you can just be like, hey, actually, I have nothing to give right now. I need a break.
Yeah.
And that should always be okay. I just got over quite a bit of heavy burnout after opening this space, because if you want to think about it psychologically and scientifically, like when you are creating and doing and it's a big project and you're fueled by it, you have a lot of adrenaline. You have a lot of dopamine that comes from, you know, building something bigger than yourself and working with people, and it's really exciting. And when that project is finished and done, like your brain is now able to kind of close that chapter, your dopamine crashes.
Yeah.
You get so tired, like your adrenaline is not pushing you to do more and be more and push and go and give up every one of your weekends anymore. And you're like, oh, you're so tired.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I had to be really proactive about that, because for me it looked like burnout. My full time is going to these spaces and sharing my spirit with people, but I wasn't being mindful of how much I was giving to myself. And I thought I was, because I was listening to podcasts and because I was, you know, getting a good night's sleep, and me and my partner's relationship was still going strong, and I was like, those are good things. But like, it took so much reaching out to my community and asking for help and being like, I actually don't have groceries because they're all growing, which is cool. Like, it's mindfulness of like, wow, look at that garlic just sprout. But then you're like, oh, because I've been feeding myself garbage and all of my plant produce is now like withered or growing. So I had to utilize all of these same resources that I speak so highly of. And that truly like put me in this state where I'm like, oh, like this is the other side of it. Like, it feels good to give, obviously, when you have that, but to be able to receive and like make it a practice of not being mean to yourself when you're receiving, like just accepting that it has to be reciprocal. It has to go both ways. Like if it's tricky, that's just something in you coming up that needs to be held and needs to be taken care of. Like,
that's a really great point.
Yeah, it should always be a giving, a receiving, or a asking the plant, or like, you know, asking a friend like, hey, do you mind going to the grocery store with me? Because I keep like disassociating, and Trader Joe's is really scary sometimes. It's its own hunting and gathering.
That is funny. I think about that too. Like, every once in a while, no, I get that, because that ties back into abundance and stuff too.
Yeah, exactly.
For abundance, you have to be open to both giving and receiving. For abundance, you give what you want to receive, but then you also have to be open for receiving. And then sometimes you also have to ask. You know, it's like, hey, like, can I get a hand
know what
here?
you're asking too, because like truly, when you're experiencing your feelings and hopefully just letting them happen, it can feel like a lot, and you don't know what to ask. You're like, I know I need help. I don't know what to ask. Like, but sometimes it's enough to just ask for time and space and stillness, and then the rest will come to you when you're feeling a little more grounded, a little more in a mindset to not just be sad, or because you need to be sad. You need to let go of
it
those.
It is important to like sit and feel your feelings.
Or even just the concept of grief. Like, recently my grandpa passed, and I say my grandpa, he's really my husband's biological grandpa, but every Sunday dinner we spent together, and I've been experiencing grief in different aspects other than just death, where it's like, you have to grieve if a friendship doesn't go the way you want to. You have to grieve if, like, there's just this idea that you had And it's not going to be that in reality. Like, if you keep holding on to that, it's just going to cut you up. Like, it's just going to cause you hurt. And maybe it's not truly like 100% a hurtful thing. You just have to kind of grieve that you wanted it one way and it's not that way. And maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, just let go of that.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, it is like that abundance thing. Sometimes the universe gives you what you needed rather than what you wanted.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you're like, what the hell is this? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then that is great. There are so many more things to grieve than just like death. And, well, I guess death in different contexts as well, you know? Death of a relationship, death of, you know, I don't even.
Well, even like, I think about my journey here to having a business space, like instead of just being a contractor, looked like my husband working really hard in corporate America. And he is not a corporate guy. We met in music school, and he initially wanted to be an educator. But if you know anything about Arizona's educational policies, and when I moved here, we were 49th when I moved here, and that was
now we're
over
like
10 years
48th?
ago. Yeah. Woo. But along his career, he had to grieve this idea that he wouldn't be a teacher. During his student teaching, all of the teachers were like, please get out. We have our masters and we haven't seen a pay raise. Like, we've worked hard, we've given everything, and it's just not, there's no support.
Yeah.
And so he took that to heart, and he started in corporate America, had to grieve this idea that he went to school for something that might not come to fruition. And then corporate America was another thing he ended up having to grieve, of like, you're promised this big, juicy money, like paycheck, salary, or whatever it is that you're told you can work for. And it's always, the community, the workplace community is so good. Like, the environment is so good. Like, our culture,
It's
our
like a
workplace
carrot
culture.
on a stick.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
And it's not. I mean, maybe if you respond well to passive aggression, it could be. But it's often not a space in which you're provided for holistically.
Yeah.
So he did not have much support, and
so where you're just expected to give and give and give
Yeah.
and give, and
Yes.
then you get a smidge in return.
Exactly. So he was still in that practice of giving 120% when the pandemic hit. And then he kind of knew it in his spirit that they were getting ready to fire him, but he didn't have any proof. He was just really discontent with the feedback he was being given, even though he did everything according to what was asked, and even more so than that, and logged all of these hours that truly weren't being paid. You know, he's doing all this free work, and they just canned him, and he had to grieve that process too of like, I thought I could provide for my family this way, and that's just not true. But then the realization that came from that, and the beauty that came from that, was like, he turned into another person when his mindset was clear, when his psyche was clear, when he wasn't having those mental battles in the shower of like, I can't believe my boss isn't, giving to my life. Like, she's just tearing me down day after day. Like, grief is huge.
Yeah.
I've been making it a practice in my therapy of just holding a space for it and being mindful of it, because it's such a regular part of our lives. Even if you're like eating an animal, you kind of have to like, I mean, ideally, if you're being mindful of it, to be the butcher, right? Like, you have to grieve the fact that you can very clearly see it was a life.
Yeah.
And like, in a perfect world, it was a good life and it only had one bad day, but you know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of grief that goes unattended to. And I think that adds a lot to it speaks on our lack of community, and it adds a lot to our mental health frustrations of like.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that is one of those things too. A couple points that like with like the corporate feel is they like to say it's a community, but it's not really, you know.
No, like I think there's one person and they bonded over the fact that they were not treated well.
Yeah.
But there's only one person in that hundreds and hundreds of people that he regularly responded and interacted with that even talks to him anymore, or like that they make it in their practice to even check in with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, geez, just one. I mean, like, what a beautiful fact that there's one, but how many people were in and out of your life that you just didn't get to connect with in that way, or that were kind of closed off because they knew they weren't going to get that from the job or from the space.
Yeah. Because I think that's one of those things, too, is in a corporate atmosphere, there just isn't the space for you to fully express yourself.
Mm-hmm. No, you
because
can't.
that's not boardroom friendly.
Right.
That's not, you know, friendly to advertisers or, you know, all that lingo, you know, it's like.
Right. And then if you think about like how truly you are giving of yourself so much when you're in those spaces, like it could be your job to set up the meetings without being paid for that to be your job, or without it being your job title, or to like cater the food and coordinate that. Sure, it's a company card, but you're still putting in that extra work of like making sure people are provided for. And it's, if that part's not reciprocated, or if it doesn't feel genuine, it's noticeable.
Yeah. It's like I'd rather just not get paid to build an actual community, you know, like rather than just have
still not get paid
exactly.
for someone else's dime.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I'd rather make value for myself and other people that I care about, you know. That's kind of where I'm at with like the band and stuff. Kind of going back to like the grief. That's what a lot of the, not this album, but I have another collection of songs that I've been kind of organizing.
Okay.
Where it's like, it's about grief, about grieving old relationships and like the death of death of ideas, ideologies, death of, again, the relationships, like how things end. But that's also a beginning, you know. What was I going with that? But yeah, when it comes to, it's just like, I really want to build a community that I can help people support, and then people also can support me, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. It's
what a beautiful gift to be a
other.
creator and create that too. My music that I create just for myself, outside of music therapy, outside of gigs, is under the artist name Huemongrel, which is Huemongrel. And currently, I only have like 3 songs that are circulating the internet. But the one that's most significant to me is on grief. It's called Empathy, and I wrote it in like 2017, where I was sitting at my grandparents' house in New Mexico, which is where they live with my parents right now. And they have a guest bedroom, but my grandma is like 13, 15 years into dementia.
Wow.
It's been a long, probably even more than that if I'm, I don't know how you measure the onset, but she has a really hard time, as most people with Alzheimer's and dementia do, when the sun goes down. They call it sundowning.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Because like in the morning, you can see everything clearly. You can see where you are. Even if you don't know exactly where you are, you know you're safe. When the sun goes down and you're not sure where you are, you're not sure who's around you, it causes a lot of fear. So it's pretty regular that she will just cry and just be like, where's my mom? Where's my dad? where's my community, the people I love, and like, what's going on? And my grandpa is her primary caregiver. So he's the one to like kind of field all those questions. And I was holding that up to this idea of so that's my mom's side. And then my dad's side of the family, both of his parents have since passed, but like when his dad passed in maybe around 2011, 2012, I don't know, 2013 even, I got to be there for kind of his last words, and he told me I was nice and good. And I was like so mad, so bitter, like because I had tried so hard for a really long time to win his approval. And I could feel that I was treated differently. Just the feelings, the microaggressions, the unspoken, even if he meant well, like I knew that I wasn't being held with the same love and respect as my cousins. I could see it. I could feel it, especially because they each got a lecture on how he was so proud of them, like all of their accolades he sees and he acknowledges and loves, and keep going and keep doing and keep giving. So when it came to me, he didn't know me.
Yeah.
And I tried so hard to cultivate that. But I ultimately had to struggle with this concept of grief, of like, the hook of the song is there's no rest for the caregiver because there's no end to empathy. Like, you don't stop caring. You don't stop wanting that relationship from your family or from your community if it's not maybe there in the moment. But you have to grieve that idea, and then it ends with like, if you need love, you give it. If you want love, you live it. Like, you have to be in that reciprocity, be in that giving and receiving, to not just be stuck in that idea of the past hurting you or the things you're fearful of, which is also just part of grieving fully. But because of that struggle with grief and that reality of like humanness, that's where my community came from. Yeah. Like, that's how people like reached out to me and were like, the same thing happened with my mom who had dementia. Like, I never thought someone could see me so clearly. And you're just like sobbing and hugging together after the show, or like, you know, I've had so many just immediately genuine interactions with people because they know my heart already just through that exchange, and they know like my ability to tell my story in a way that's still really loving of myself and still really giving to others. So I think being a creator and creating community is, it has to be, you have to create community, even if you think about it as just like your fan base or like your social media following, I don't know, however you want to think about the people whose lives you touch. Like, you have to be creative and mindful in this building of community. Otherwise it's not reciprocal. Yeah,
that is. I think I've mentioned this before, but probably not on recording. But there is an element, also when it comes to like that kind of community building. But when you're performing as a musician, and I think if you're making, you know, real music, it's like going up on stage naked. But for some people, it's like a mirror. And as vulnerable as that is, people can also see themselves in that. And that's what builds the community. Yeah, and it's in two ways too. It's that mimicry that you're talking about. That's like, true, where it's like, you can mimic stomp, clap, Lumineers, ho hey, like, sure. But it's not, if it's not telling anything and it's not genuine or authentic, people are just going to be like, oh, that was cool. But they're not going to be like, oh, that song hit me, or like, oh, I really connected with this, or like, I can see your heart when you're performing, or like, like, which is, there's still a market for that. You still need commercial music, sure. Or there's still like an entire profession in the field of music that's just industry. That's just, you know, kind of, I don't want to say creating disposable music. That doesn't sound nice, but like. But sometimes it kind of is. Not gonna lie. It's different than storytelling music. Yeah.
And it matters. In the sense of spirituality, I think about the power of your words.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not saying anything, your words are kind of just like there.
It just bounces off.
Yeah. They're just kind of like sad little squiggles, like, meow, 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 meow.
Yeah.
You just watch them fall to the ground. Or truly, too, if you're angry and you're shouting,
Yeah.
or even if you're not shouting, you're just speaking with such intensity. Like,
Yeah.
you can feel that. I hope I didn't scare you, but like, you can
it's all
feel
good.
that. And it's true, too, with what you're saying to yourself. Like, even if it's not, expelling as breath and air and energy, like you're still internalizing it and eating it.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, therapy is so nice. It's not nice. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
But, like, talk therapy is so important because those ideas can just bump around in your head if they're unchecked and kind of eat you up. But, like, when you're making music, too, like, if you're just reminding others and yourself that it's okay to rest, or like that it's, they're loved, or you're safe, or like, it's a very different vibe than we're all gonna die.
Yeah, I know it.
Well, I mean, that's important too.
Oh, yeah.
That was a Sufjan reference. Hi. You'll never listen to this probably, but I love you. Okay.
Here, can we pause for a second? I gotta go to the bathroom. But I have some notes on stuff to continue talking about.
Yes.
I'll take a pause. Speaking of rest, I think we're rolling once again. Cool. And we're back. So talking about what you were saying about dementia, really, I don't have a ton of experience with dementia. Like, my grandfather has dementia, but that's a whole other can of worms, because the person he is and the way, he's treated people, there's a reason there are senior homes.
Yeah.
And that's another side of it too. It's like some people just get worse. And that's not to say that it's not tragic.
Right.
It's still tragic. Then there's just so many different aspects to that. It's the human condition. Have you ever seen the show BoJack Horseman?
I have not. It comes up on my recommended a lot, but I'm very sensitive to like the media I consume. Being an anxious person, if it's true dramatic, I'm like, I need resolution.
It's a comedy drama, so it diffuses a little bit of the drama, but it hits hard. I haven't rewatched it in a while. The earlier seasons probably haven't aged super well, because it's really, there was a lot of like pop culture reference kind of stuff
For sure.
of the time. I think it came out in like 2014, but one of the later seasons tackles dementia and how, again, one aspect of it, this, where the main character has a relationship with his mother, and then as she's getting dementia, it is causing more problems for the both of them, and it can be tough. Like the show is a tough watch, but I think at the same time, it's a lot of people feel seen. That's one of the things I like to do in any kind of creation, and again, going back to it, any kind of community is allowing people to be seen, no matter what their experiences are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is kind of one of those things too, where it's like it does require a deeper level of vulnerability, and this is kind of interesting. So while I dropped out of the ASU pop music program,
Right.
and that is one of those things that I feel isn't really talked about enough when it comes to at least like pop music, the genre. Even when it's like vulnerable, a lot of the time it doesn't necessarily feel genuine.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I think we were talking about that a little bit earlier.
musically, it's very interesting. music takes on structure and it makes it easier for humans to share it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, ultimately that there's going to be like a verse and a chorus, and the verse might tell you a story and the chorus is just going to reiterate an idea. Or like in blues, like, you know, the 12 bars, like,
Yeah.
you know what they are, you know how to recite them, you know how to mimic them, like, and it's just a way that we can set that precedent, that baseline for sharing it. Like, totally makes sense. But for pop music, I think part of the reason it's popular is because you can easily consume it and you can like, I don't know, it's meant to be simple and digestible and easy and shareable.
It's like sugar water.
Like
or
sugar water,
something
yeah.
like that. You know, you can take it in, your body, you can process it really easy. It's in and out.
Like your ear tends to be happy because you hear the patterns, you know it's coming, you know maybe the sound of it's gonna like resolve, or there's not a lot of anticipating for something new to happen. But because of that safety in it, I feel like it does make it harder to talk about difficult things. Yeah. And in the timestamp of, you know, 2 to 3 minutes, there's not a lot of room to say, well, there could be a lot of room to say, but you'd have to like condense it and make it a really simple idea to digest. Like, it's not, it doesn't allow for as vivid of storytelling as I think that we're craving right now in
and you
our
gotta
society.
Structure it to fit on like a radio play or something, you know.
And I'm kind of hopeful that like that'll die away a little bit.
Yeah.
Just being a musician and seeing music consumed from different ways of like just, you know, call and response or sing-alongs or a vessel to tell some really hefty stuff like in music therapy or in life. And there are so many facets of it, but like I think what I've noticed from the way we share information on social media is that we're ready to talk about really difficult things again. Like, sometimes it doesn't feel safe if it's not the right person, if it's not the right environment at the right time. But the amount of people, you know, talking about mental health or talking about trauma or talking about, ADHD or like, just wanting to communicate.
Generally neurodivergency, you know?
Yeah. Like, those are not easy topics. Yeah. And still people are talking about them. So I don't know what the future of pop music outside of commercial sales and stuff, but I'm hopeful that more people, now that there is more accessibility to the platform of sharing music, I'm hopeful that more people will be like, actually, this is my story. Like, it's not a cute love song. It's not, you know, a walk in the park with
People love darker music.
Yeah.
People love darker music. It's just radios don't always want to play it, you know? I forget what I was necessarily going to go with that. But kind of going back to that sugar water analogy, I like to listen to music that is more akin to like bone broth, if that makes sense. It's still easy to take in, but it's nutritious. Yeah. I guess a good example to me would be, I've been listening to so many like Latin grooves and like all this amazing musicianship and just like this wide range of like percussion and hearing all this like different kind of new stuff. Yes. So that's and there's layers and there's a lot of that's
humanity.
True. It's layered.
Like pop music, you have filters to take out the error. You have like processes to fine tune and tweak and auto tune and make squeaky clean and that's nice, but like you don't always want a marble.
Life isn't squeaky clean.
And life's not squeaky clean. And I mean a marble in that it's like round and smooth and easy. And like sometimes you want the crystal with like the chunks in it, and this, you can see all the lines and you can see all the scratches and signs of life. Like you don't always want that nice polished thing.
Yeah. That's one of my challenges. At this point, I haven't given up, but I now am just, I think the music I make is imperfect, but that's more of a reflection who I am as a person. I'm not perfect.
Yeah,
you know?
no
I don't
one
want to
is.
make perfect music, because a lot of stuff that's like perfect, in order to do it perfect, you have to like simplify it. I think that kind of like we were talking earlier, it's like in order for it to be perfect, it has to be more simple. And I don't know. I wouldn't describe my own music as necessarily complex, but maybe like rich, quote unquote.
For sure.
You know, but yeah, it's like, it's just so interesting. I don't think I said it on the recording, but I was in, you know, probably at the very least multiple $100,000 studio, and they still had to worry about the noise floor of a microphone that was, you know, like $3,000.
Yeah.
Like a $3,000 microphone, and they still had to worry about room noise.
Wow.
And that's just so interesting to me. That's why I just want to record something on a tape, because there's going to be like anyway, at least like control what like outside noise you're going to be putting into it.
Yeah.
That's why I recorded those birds, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be, that'll be in a song. That will be in a song. Car driving by or something. But yeah. I guess kind of the last thing I had written down from before the break was the power of words. And that's one of those things I've been trying to be really careful about, because I like singing about being in a darker place, but I want to be careful of what I say, especially if I go sing it and I repeat it to myself, you know, because that can then, it's like, what am I telling myself? I got to be careful, because ideally, like when I'm writing, I'm looking at trying to, let's see, if I had a visual descriptor, but I'm trying to write about the process of coming out of that low place rather than sitting in that low place. It's like Sisyphus, like pushing the boulder up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it does matter. I think one of the silliest things I started doing for my mental health, and I say silly because that's my own judgment of how it felt when I first started it, is affirmations.
Affirmations are so good.
They're so important. And the silliness came from like, it's not a practice to talk to yourself usually ever. And
but it's good for you.
Yeah,
like
it is good.
Yeah.
It's oh my goodness. In the sense of processing musicality, music therapy, if you're a kinesthetic person, you need to pace. Like, it shouldn't be shamed out of pacing. If you're an oral person, like, you need to hear something. If you say something out loud, it might stick better. Like, kinesthetic, if you write it down, it's going to stick better. Like, visual, like seeing it's going to stick better. Yeah. So like affirmations are a tool. They're just a tool to make sure that you're talking to yourself well and thinking about things better.
Yeah.
Better suggestive, but like just not being stuck in sadness or stuck in cycles of being frustrated. And the power of words, like I like to call myself a perfectionist, and I've had to unlearn that because like for a while it was my pride. Like, oh yeah, if I'm struggling with it, it's just not ready yet. Like it's not, there's still more work to be done or whatever. But it was really me not accepting the fact that it would be flawed or imperfect or like, I've been musical since I was born, just like making noise, making songs, writing songs, like since I can remember. And I hadn't even performed once for myself for my own words until I was like 22, 23.
Yeah, wow.
It was like really sad. But just the power of words being, and the affirmation's significance being like, I was just ruminating on these thoughts in my head, and I didn't realize I was, because it feels normal when you're just chilling with your thoughts. But reading and vocalizing something like I'm happy to be alive. Yeah. If you're not like immediately happy in the moment, it feels like the biggest lie. But it isn't. And it's a good practice to remind yourself, like, I might be experiencing sadness, but that doesn't make me a sad person existing entirely sad. Or my existence is not entirely noir or like emo or like whatever. So, yeah. I'm glad you looked into that affirmations tape, because it is literally just that, like,
I was just thinking about that too.
Yeah,
it was like I was thinking about the saying like "sad cheat anada," like that kind of thing, where it's like the I forget the translation for it, but one of those words I think is consciousness, something like that. But yeah, it's so important, because for everyone grew up differently, and sometimes when you're growing up, you have a lot of negative things put into your brain, and then you tell yourself those negative things. I remember as a child, I'd like go to sleep like telling myself that no one liked me, you know?
That's tough.
Like, yeah, like I do affirmations like that, and it's like, wow, just kind of just kind of coming around, because sometimes if you're not grown up shown how to think positive thoughts, you have to feed yourself some positive thoughts, because what you put in is what you put out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's so like a testament to truly your growth in that, at least from what I can tell, as you are a functioning adult and we're having this conversation about spirituality and creation.
Got to start somewhere, you know?
Yeah, but like, it's as much as you learn, like sometimes you got to unlearn too.
Yeah, so much unlearning.
I don't know that my parents were necessarily telling me anything negative, but I knew that they didn't love themselves.
I was in a similar boat.
Yeah. And, you know, they were both in the military, so they had to be very hard to their body. Like, they had to force it to do things for physical training that they didn't want to do, you know? They had to just experience a lot of things that were not safe. And so they didn't always feel safe in their body. Like, they'd have cramps, or they'd have, you know, just be so anxious it turned into IBS, or be so frustrated it turned into, like, you know, trauma responses. Or not that that's all attached to the military, but just it's your body physically internalizing that energy. So, like, the unlearning part came for me first in the words, because like I grew up Christian, and so like I had this like kind of duality of, I was seeing adults not take care of themselves and seeing people not take care of themselves or their community, but I was being taught that you should, and that it's good, and that you must,
it's
and
like,
that
do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. So, and obviously all humans are flawed, so it wasn't a failing of my parents or the community. It was just like this idea of like, you get humans together and they can build you up or they can tear you down. And that's true of a single person too. You can build yourself up, you can tear yourself down. Like, and that's all choice, even if it doesn't feel like choice. It's what you're choosing to consume. It's what you're choosing to say, what you're choosing to think. It's all tied together.
Because especially when unlearning, when you first realize you need to unlearn some stuff, it's like everything's just like blown up.
Yeah.
It's like if you have something in a microwave and it just like explodes, it's like that kind of thing. It's just like everywhere, and it's like, where do I even start?
Yeah. One of my big ones was I, for whatever reason, learned that it wasn't okay to cry.
Yeah.
And I, always thought you had to have like some big reason to cry, like someone died or, there's a national tragedy or something.
Yeah.
And so I would be really conflicted with, why I needed to cry when I was like stressed out, or why I needed to cry if I was not necessarily sad about anything, but my body just had that buildup of stress. Like I would tell myself such horrible things about crying to the point where, like, it was very not okay to cry when I was a kid, but I'm seeing now that my parents did their best, but they were just very frustrated and they didn't have the words to stop the tears or, the understanding in the moment of what frustrated me. And that's okay. Like, it's fine. But for me, like, I internalized it as I would just hold my breath every time I wanted to cry until I passed out.
Wow.
And that sucked. Yeah. Like, breath is such a powerful thing.
That is, yeah.
Like, it literally gives the momentum to your words. Like, if you're stifling that, if you're pushing that down, if you're, like, restricting that, or it's not coming easily, like, people die from that. You die from pneumonia. Like,
that's true.
And, I got my first tattoo a while ago, and it says cry baby, but there's a comma between. It's like an affirmation of
cry baby.
Yeah, just
like
cry.
That. I like that. Yeah. Because that is one of those things I've heard, again, probably on TikTok, is like the way you react to your emotions is the way your caregivers reacted to your emotions, also their emotions,
Yeah.
Like, my parents didn't know what to do with their emotions, so they didn't know what to do with mine, you know? And now I have to learn what to do with mine.
Yeah.
The garden helps a lot.
Yeah,
I like going and like staring at plants. It gives me a smile. It's there's a specific terminology I've been trying to remember, but basically stuff to calm the nervous system is what works best for me. Body motion, of course, like moving, walking around.
Excuse me, I burped.
That's okay.
Please edit.
But yeah, it's like the moving, walking around works for me. Maybe like channeling the energy somewhere, because then that doesn't mean, because I think to me channeling the energy is part of feeling the feelings as well as like, because again, if it's stuck inside you, it's going to be stuck inside you, and then it's going to like permeate all throughout. But
absolutely,
you let it pass. Just let it pass. And, and then sometimes you get a really cool song out of it. Like,
yeah. And honestly, it's kind of the song. It's kind of aftercare in that sense.
That's
of
true.
Like,
that's true.
You're processing it, and you're accepting that it happened. You're accepting that, someone broke up with me. Which is human. It's totally normal. And it matters how you think about it and how you kind of write it off in your head. Like, like if the breakup was like, I never felt like I was giving enough or doing enough, and that lack of self-acceptance was what was the hindrance in the relationship, or I don't know. There's tons of reasons you could break up, but
I think there's in situations like that is like, I guess it's more of a problem if you're at the end of the relationship and you're like, what did go wrong? It's like, what was the problem? I think that's, I wouldn't necessarily, that would be something I had in like the past, like long time ago kind of stuff. But I feel that there's like the self-awareness. It requires a level of self-awareness that you don't really have when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
Or at least I didn't have when I was a teenager.
No, that's it comes with experience, and it comes with unlearning, and it comes with time. I mean, ideally.
Yeah, exactly.
You could be stuck in a really long loop of telling yourself some really icky stuff, so it doesn't always come with time.
Well, that's another bit of knowledge from the show BoJack Horseman is like you can stop growing at any time, you know, like some people, because I think a lot of the time it's kind of a decision to stop growing. Well, it's not a decision to stop growing. You can just stop growing, but you have to consciously choose to continue growing past like the mental age of like 16.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or probably whatever age you encounter significant trauma. Legit. It's like if you're a toddler and you have something terrible happen, I mean, you might be able to speak on that a little bit. You know?
Trauma truly rewires our brain.
Yeah.
So I think about neuroplasticity, right? Like the ability for your brain to take in new information and store it with like-minded information so that you can get it back when you need to recall it. That's how our brain works. It's like I don't know. I'm in my, I guess, late 20s. Ooh, that feels weird to say. Self-acceptance. I'm in my late 20s.
Yeah.
Life happens fast.
Yeah.
And I think about that SpongeBob meme where they're in the filing cabinets and they're like,
Yeah.
the name, we threw out the name.
Yeah.
It's like that. Your brain is storing all of this information it's getting. Trauma is your response or brain's response or safety response to something you couldn't control. So like really intense traumas might be like car accidents. Like you might be fearful
like a
of
capital T trauma.
Yeah, capital T trauma. Things that happened that made you extremely unsafe, and now your body and your brain is trying to store that information as best it can to still keep you safe and functioning. So in extreme cases of trauma, you can be stunted at whatever age that happened. Like, I don't know, if you're Batman style and you see your parents pass or whatever, you might get stuck at that juvenile stage of like...
That'd be an interesting take on Batman.
Yeah, like I need that hero. I'm going to become that hero. I'm going to like fight all the bad guys. But like, what are the bad guys? I don't know. Or like, you see it as well in... I forget the specific name of it now. It's no longer called multiple personality disorder. It's called
dissociative identity.
Yeah, DID. Dissociative identity, where it's like your brain is the coolest, like squishy meat thing ever. Electric steak. I don't know what you want to think about it as.
Is it electric steak?
Yeah,
I love
like,
that.
it's just the squishy meat thing,
funny.
and all of these interactions are happening energetically, and. I don't know, let's say you're in this state where you repetitively have to experience something that no human should have to experience, be it, you know, abuse or negligence or whatever. Like, your brain can't really hold that concept if you're not old enough, if it's just too big and you're not safe to process it. So, like, if it gets attached to, I don't want to say... this isn't specifically my field, so pardon me if I get it wrong, but this is my understanding of it. It can get attached to like escapism or like other ideas of something that would keep you safe. Like maybe it's a really cool, like middle-aged person who has their life together and is the adult that you actually need. Like your brain might hold on to that idea and store it away for later. Like when we're ready to deal with all of this anger, it's going to be this really kick-ass lady who is like just ready to take everything into action. Or like once we're ready to feel safe in being childish, it's going to be this, you know, beautiful childish innocence. And that's its own person. And like your brain is allowing you to hold all of these really tough dualities of like not being safe in the moment, but knowing that what your needs are, right?
Yeah.
and still having like that ability to fight for them.
Yeah, having to fight for your needs is one of those. We were talking about it before recording, but when you first start actually self-advocating and standing up and saying like, hey, these are my needs, here are how we satisfy them, etc., that kind of thing. It's so stressful to start.
It's really stressful.
Because sometimes, at least I grew up in a household where I would express my needs and then immediately it would be like in some way just disassembled.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of like swatted away. And it's like, oh yeah, you have it great. And it's like,
yeah, like you don't have to worry about where your food's coming from, where your bed is. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, no, I understand that I am a human receiving the basics of survival. Like,
yeah.
That's not really what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, it's just so interesting because I don't think people can encounter that kind of energy anywhere, right? You can encounter that at a workplace. You can encounter that in school. I think a lot of people encounter that in school too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wow, this project is really bothering me or something. And the teacher's like, well, you got to do it, you know? Like,
right. And unfortunately, like kind of back to that idea of trauma, I feel like this word is getting talked about more and more, which is so good. It's so important to be communally conscious about struggling and about really shitty stuff that happens. I mean, really crappy stuff that happens. I don't know if you want to be explicit in this podcasting, but
I don't think we need to censor anything. You know,
okay.
That's what I'd rather it be real firsthand. Like we were talking about, we
Absolutely.
don't need to dilute.
Good.
Yeah.
I just know that that's a different label you have to put on it when you upload it. But your brain is so smart and it's just trying to keep you safe. So like if you do experience a big trauma, it's going to make those connections of like negative or like unsafe.
Yeah.
And even if, I don't want to say realistically, but holistically, even if holistically you're safe, like your needs are being met and you're, you know, it was just one thing that upheaved you and associated with those unsafe feelings from the past. Like that's still how you're processing them in your present. So like the more awareness we have of trauma, the better, because sure, there are some keywords and buzzwords that might not be significant, but like the ability to understand it in the first place is like the first step you even have to get you out of the cycles of telling yourself negative things or being fearful of things that you don't want to be fearful of, you know? Or understanding your body and why you hold your muscles so tight or why there's pain in your jaw or like what things are being left unsaid that are causing you to have hiccups for 8 years. That was my experience.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Just so much.
That makes sense. I feel like a lot of those things that kind of ties into like spiritual, like self issues, I feel like can manifest physiologically. You know, it's like if you're not saying what you need to say, it's going to be trapped inside, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, wow. That's a great point. And going back to just the knowing is half the battle kind of mentality is it's really sad, even especially like when you care about someone and they have some kind of issue and it's like, hey, you know, I want to keep working with you, but you got to address this issue. And sometimes it is just such a big old box full of mental, like all this trauma and things that they just don't want to unpack. Yeah. But it's still going to be there.
It's always going to be there unless you unpack it, unless you speak it, unless you like process it. Like,
it's like you can point to the box, but that's all you can do for other people. Because they have to be the one to go and unpack it and decide what they want to keep, what they want to leave, and what they want to let go of, you know. And
absolutely.
you can't do that for anyone else. And that's, and it's just really sad, especially when it's someone you care about. And it's like, and then like seeing someone go back into another cycle of like that kind of, you know, affirming that trauma, maybe even not necessarily like capital T, but like little t trauma.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's tragic, you know, but there's only so much you can do.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I've just been mulling over in this past bit.
Yeah. These are all such big concepts too.
Yeah.
Like, there's, oh my gosh, you could think about it from any level. Like internally, you could think about it communally, even just after experiencing like the inability to feel safe in your surroundings during the pandemic. Like,
yeah, because the community will go into trauma cycles as well.
Yeah, like just psychologically, if you don't feel safe going to the grocery store, you still have to go to the grocery store. Like, and that's a new fear you have to carry around now. Like everyone's carrying around, everyone's kind of projecting outwards if they're not dealing with it. Like, of course we have issues. Like, of course.
If yours are very dense, they're small but dense.
Yeah. And like, so on the micro, you have yourself and your own issues, and then you keep getting larger and larger, like your community, your city, your state, your country, globally. Like, it feels like a lot, but even just being able to communicate about it and like share other people's experiences honestly has to be enough. Like, our little peasant brains were not meant to do as much as we forced them to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's there's a lot. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to start packing up and stuff. But I think that's a decent spot to kind of leave it on.
Yeah.
It's like acknowledge that box, and you know, sometimes opening the box is more stressful than actually clearing it out and taking those things out.
Absolutely.
I feel like the stress of starting something always tends to be more than actually doing the thing.
Yeah.
Like the stress of advocating for oneself is like, oh no, I have to stand up for myself. And then you actually go and stand up for yourself, and it's like, all right. You know?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and for talking about